The Mark Thompson Show.
There are a lot of interesting stories in the world of politics, but this is really one of them that has made it to the surface in this election cycle. I'm talking about the Dianne Feinstein Senate seat and how the established group of those who want her seat have all been handicapped as likely heirs to the seat. I'm talking about, of course, Barbara Lee, maybe in the pack with the others, Schiff, et cetera, and Katie Porter, of course. But I think one of the more interesting stories in this entire race is from a candidate that nobody was expecting to be talking about, and now we're all learning about. She is a veteran television news reporter in Los Angeles and a first-time candidate. She spent more than a decade in TV news, and now she's joined this contest for the Senate seat vacated with the death of Dianne Feinstein. How about it for Christina Pascucci, everybody?
Hi, Mark. Really good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. In fact, I must say, of all of the stories, this really is perhaps the most interesting one in some respects. You're someone who's covered politics. You've covered these candidates. You've covered so many of these issues that are a big part of these campaigns. But now you're taking a different route and trying to, I would think, if you get into office, tackle some of these very issues that you've covered.
Yes. I was watching this race unfold. I was so uninspired by what I saw, and I knew with the experience that I had that I could do a better job. And so I hope to get that opportunity, and I appreciate you hearing me out because the stakes have never been higher.
When you say that you feel that you could do a better job than the others, throw some specifics on that. Like what strategies do you envision that you don't see in the others?
That's fair. Well, I think overall I'm just much more in touch with what Californians want and what they say their needs are and their needs that haven't been met. I've spent so much time, nearly 2 decades actually, in the trenches alongside them on their best and their worst days, holding them as they cry, seeing firsthand how policies and ineffective and harmful policies have impacted their lives. And I care so deeply for the people of my state and the people I've interviewed. And I don't want to be a career politician. I just want to make a difference and make life a little bit easier for Californians because it's become almost unmanageable. It's so expensive. People don't feel safe. My own family's been impacted by the crime that we've seen, the rise in crime in recent years. And, it's time to not be beholden to any sort of special interest, but just to the special interests of the people of California and what they need.
Yeah. So when you talk about yourself in relation to the others, because, sadly, you got to run against these other people. I mean, that's just the way it's set up. And so you have to distinguish yourself. It sounds to me like you're saying, hey, I know a lot more of the X's and O's because I've lived a lot more of the X's and O's on the street and as a journalist. Mm-hmm. And it sounds as though you feel as though you reflect, I'm just kind of playing back what I'm hearing a little bit,
Sure.
some of those issues in a way that reflects an empathy, I'll use that word, or a relatability. In other words, you relate to some of these issues that you're seeing. So where are the others falling down on the job? Because I see, if you look at Schiff and Porter and Lee, I mean, they're pretty solid from the standpoint of what they've done legislatively and where they've stood and where they continue to stand. So do you look at them and see failings on their part, or do you just tell me how you assess them?
I don't think that people, including their own constituents, feel seen and heard largely. I mean, if you're looking at the polls and what voters are saying themselves, they should be much higher in the polls if they were effective as legislators and were doing the work that they say they do. I mean, they've been campaigning for nearly a year. There's millions of dollars behind them. The whole establishment essentially is behind them. And they have national name recognition. And still they're polling at such low numbers. And to me, that says that the people of California are hungry for something different. They don't want more of the same. My opponents, the front runner opponents, have more than 50 years legislating. And I think it's time to try something new because what we're doing hasn't worked.
So let's talk then about some of the issues in California. What would you, and I'm not going to hold you to this priority list per se, but in sort of top 3 priorities, why don't you give me a sense of how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that Democrats won't talk about typically, like the border crisis. That's really important to tackle. There's a humanitarian crisis unfolding there. There's human trafficking happening every single day. There's just people in dire need. But then there's also, you know, our Border Patrol can't keep up with what's happening. I was on the phone with them earlier. I was talking to some officials within San Diego County, and they've had 44,000, I believe that's a number around there, of migrants coming into San Diego County since mid-September alone. And that's only the single males and females. That doesn't include the more vulnerable populations, and that doesn't include people who have come in illegally. And so they're not able to keep up. And I think this is spiraling out of control. We're seeing it manifest across our country. And some Democrats are saying there's not even an issue at the border. That's just not being authentic or genuine with the American people and the people of California. And so that needs to be made a priority. So that would be one. And just on the border, it seems like one of those intractable issues that's used politically by both parties, and yet the answers seem complicated, and as I say, it's intractable. It's tough to come up with sensible strategies. Do you have any thoughts on what might be done? Well, it is and it's not. I mean, sometimes we make things more complicated than we need to be. We need more resources. We need more judges to process asylum seekers. We need a more efficient path to citizenship. And overall, there needs to be the political will, which there isn't because people are not even acknowledging there's a problem in many cases. And that in of itself is extremely problematic. So I think getting the resources there, also partnering with organizations that can help people who are experiencing the humanitarian crisis component of this, people who are being targeted by human traffickers. And then, of course, you have the fentanyl issue, which is a whole other issue, surging through our border. It's as someone who has a family member who is addicted to drugs, I'm extremely concerned about that as well.
So I'm thinking with border crisis as a backdrop, then you get to the streets of California, you get to the cities of California, communities of California, all that have been, I think really literally all, certainly the big cities have been plagued by some of the problems adjacent to or, very much front and center when it comes to the drug crisis, which you speak of, homelessness, crime. Thoughts on how that settles out in a Pascucci type administration? Yeah,
well, I mean, first off, when you look at things like homelessness, that's another top priority for me. And as a reporter, something I saw, I was also an advocate and a humanitarian and a philanthropist throughout much of my adult life. And one thing I focused on was foster youth. Half of the homeless population was in the foster care system. So an obvious thing that I would tackle right away is to give more resources and support to foster youth, both early intervention, because they go through so much. So that early intervention is very important. The support throughout the course of their time in foster youth, the whole foster care system really needs to be revamped. And then when they transition out, the transitional age foster youth, we need to look at that as well, because it's 18 years old in some cases, 21 in California, and most 21-year-olds aren't ready to go out into the world. A lot of them have their family support, and we should be able to give support to these kids as well, because expecting them to be able to self-sustain with a couple $100s in their pockets is not the right thing to do. So
that just seems so right on. The foster programs and the foster youth programs, so critical, underfunded in a state where we have a lot of funds that go toward the homelessness situation and to trying to put a dent in homelessness. We seem unable to do it. I also look at you mentioned kids, the idea somehow that kids that are supposed to be protected by the state essentially go unprotected because we are just undermanned, to use the generic term, just understaffed when it comes to so many of these child protective services, for example. There's so many aspects of the social structure that seem to be falling through the cracks in California, and it does seem to be largely about money.
Yeah, and there's a few things that came up for me when you were just saying some of those points. Is one, there needs to be a cohesive approach. So yes, I'm running for U.S. Senate, but as U.S. Senator, I wouldn't just be in my silo in Washington, D.C. I think it's important to have a cohesive approach and make sure you're working toward a common goal with, state legislators, county legislators, and also local cities. It's important to all be moving in the same direction. And that's been a little bit lost. And so no wonder you have so many people, going in different ways, trying to solve some of these complex problems. And that creates a lot of complications. Also, I'm very optimistic about California. We live in one of the most amazing places on earth. This is where I was born and raised. My mom came here from Germany to find a better life for her child. And I couldn't love it more or believe in its potential. However, when you talk about the money isn't necessarily a problem in the sense of, we're the 5th largest economy in the world. There is a lot of abundance here, but where is that money going and how is it being used? And I feel, and I've seen in my reporting, that there is an utter lack of accountability. It's like the left arm doesn't know what the right arm's doing. And so just kind of bringing that in a little bit, I think would make a tremendous difference as well when it comes to fighting some of these big issues like homelessness.
As you began this conversation with yourself and your family and people you trust and people who know this world of politics, take us through how you decided you were going to run for office, because you seem really competent in terms of your ideas and, as your record as someone who has a distinguished journalistic history is there. But wow, this is a real tough mountain to climb for some of the reasons that we've hinted at. And I'm wondering if you were discouraged from this path or what people told you.
Oh, interesting question. Yeah. So, I knew I wanted to make a difference in a bigger way. And I was increasingly fed up with what I was seeing, just ineffective leaders, corruption, false promises, not being authentic when they're talking to people, and just keeping it real. Let's just talk about what's really going on and what we can do to help, what we can't do at this point. Just talk to people. And it's always this political jargon, and it drives me nuts. I think hearing directly from people and just seeing the loss of the California dream increasingly motivated me to do something more. And that's really, when I think about this and I think about the challenges ahead, I'm really focused on the people. I'm not focused on the establishment, because if I were, then yes, I would be discouraged. But in order to do something bold and to really shake up what we have been, this political machine, this system that we've all just succumbed to. I mean, voters aren't even engaged because they just think, okay, there's not much I can do. California is just California. It's going to be the same. I reject that. And I think if you want a new possibility, you have to think differently. Of course, when there's change, people will say, oh, it can't be done, or, that hasn't been done, but it hasn't until it has. And someone has to step up and try. And I think based on my experience and my knowledge, my intimate knowledge of the issues, the people, and my experience around the world, I'm very well positioned for this, and I'm confident in my abilities. So anything that anyone else says, I take that more as a reflection on themselves than on me.
Did you consider, hey, maybe I'll try a starter political position like, I don't know, school board or, I don't know, state senator? You went right for this. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on all the information I've gathered, the research I've done, I have very tangible experience with all of these issues. You look at, for example, something that's just top of mind right now, fighting for people around environmental injustice. I helped expose a cancer cluster that was impacting teachers and their students at Malibu High School, and that ultimately garnered national attention. I kept pressing politicians during the largest gas leak in U.S. history in Porter Ranch. the Eggside battery plant. There was a Latino community, largely Latino community around that plant, and they were getting poisoned by lead. I shined a light on that. And so my experience goes beyond, sitting in an office and legislating. I have this real world lived experience that I don't think any time in city council or, any of these other places could buy. And I really respect people who are willing to do this, by the way, no matter what level of government it is, because it's really important. But based on my experience, not only across the state, but, going to more than 100 countries across 7 continents in war zones, interviewing world leaders, everyone from the Dalai Lama to former President Trump. A random fact about me, I do a lot of conservation work. And so the president of Palau, the Republic of Palau, a tiny island nation south of the Philippines, appointed me his ambassador. So I've lived a lot of lives in one and had a ton of experience that's very unique that I think would be hard to find if you looked at our current leaders in the Senate.
And that's a terrific track record. I mean, of sort of crusading for environmental justice and for bringing truth. And those are things I would hope you'd continue to scream about, because we need to hear about it. The last thing I would ask you is about the fact that you're going to be welcoming another person into your family at the same time you're running for Senate.
She's been very active today. She's starting to kick a lot. I'm about 6 months pregnant now. And, my sense of purpose has never been greater. I'm going to get emotional thinking about it, but I have so much love for this baby girl already. And I'm fighting for her future and for the future of her generation. We have really done a bad job so far, leaving the world as a better place for them than we found it. And we can do more. We live in one of the most exciting times in history. There is so much brilliance and innovation, and technology can be used in incredible ways if we just tap into that. And part of how you do that is by uniting people. Our politicians are so addicted to being right, to proving the other side wrong. And in my opinion, that's a net loss for America. We need to bring back when Democrats and Republicans would talk and they would converse, and they would end up with a better idea than what they originally had by bringing each of their perspectives to the table. Yeah,
there's a much more naked, self-absorbed quality to politics today, sort of branding yourself over some of these other things. Kim, did you have a question for Christina Pascucci?
Yeah, I was thinking about your pregnancy, and congratulations, by the way. So awesome. I'm a mother of 2 as well. And so when you get emotional, first of all, full-on pregnancy hormones, and I get that.
They're raging.
But something important to women, not only in California, but across the country, is reproductive rights. And so I wonder, and I know you're running as a Democrat, so I can assume it, but for the record, what's your stance on reproductive rights? And not only in California, but what will you do to protect that if you are sent to Washington, D.C. to represent us?
The reporter in me loves that question because you can never make any assumptions. And yes, I do support a woman's right to her body. I think it's crazy that we live in the time that we live in where that has to be questioned. I think about my own situation, knock on wood, God forbid. But, if something was really wrong right now, if she wouldn't survive or my life was threatened simultaneously, I want to be able to make my own health decisions. And it's, we shouldn't take that away from women. I also think that we should support women and try to prevent abortion from happening in the first place, like not normalize it, by through education, through contraception, through making the adoption process much easier. And so it has to be something in which we are not vilifying women. A woman should never be sentenced to death or jail, or some of the crazy stories you've heard from different parts of this country if they decide to have an abortion. And I think we're all taking the completely wrong approach. Also, it's kind of one of those points where there's not enough pro-life senators or congressional people on the federal level anyway to ban abortion. So why are we even wasting our breath having that discussion instead of supporting women? I want to see the support of women be at the forefront of all that we do. And that also bleeds into things like childcare. And getting women into the workforce and supporting them that way. I don't know how we can expect our society to thrive if we don't support families, from the beginning of that child's life. So that's really important to me as well.
Interesting. And you make an interesting point about the politics of it. And I think it really is just politics. So many of national profile just want to, even non-national profile, I suppose, but just on the national level, they want to burnish their own political reputation. That's the reason they press for the national ban, et cetera. They know they're not the votes there, but they also know that by pressing for it, they gain some, you can fundraise off it and do all the other things that are so loathsome about American politics. The other thing that Kim had mentioned to me was that and you've noted this in our conversation just to their last minute or so, the nature of the conversation around issues in America and politics in America, it's gotten so ugly. It seems as though the Trump administration and candidates like Trump and, frankly, administrations like Trump have ushered in a new sort of politician who just throws heat. And somehow, if you can throw these enough of these rhetorical Molotov cocktails, you can, again, rise to national prominence. I wonder how I don't see that in you, at least thus far, how you navigate a landscape like that.
Yeah, it does seem that the more polarizing of a figure you are, the more you're rewarded with likes and clicks. And it's almost like an addiction. It's something that we need to stop now. And it's a big part of why I'm running. I think that ultimately our politicians will respond to what voters respond to. And so I'd like to create a paradigm shift in which, by essence of the type of leader I am, someone who is effective, someone who shows heart and compassion, someone who actually gets things done and makes life better for the American people and the people of California, voters will like that. They will respond to that. Other lawmakers will start taking note and they'll be like, oh, okay, maybe there's another way to do this in which we can return to working together. We can become more effective, and that would be my dream and my wish as I'm entering into this crazy world. But a big part of my past is my parents are very Republican, and they've taught me so much about disagreeing with someone with decency and respect. And so sometimes I teach them something, sometimes they teach me something. But at the end of the day, we leave the conversation with love and, honoring where the other person's at. And I think that is very, very important at this point in history, especially.
Well, we wish you good luck. As I say, you have a very unconventional story in some ways. And yet when you scratch beneath the surface, there's a lot there that would perhaps prepare you in terms of knowing issues, etc., for this unlikely path, or what some might consider unlikely. Love that we visited. Hope we visit again. I wish you well. As I say, I've always respected your work. We've had your website up here, so hopefully you'll get a little, Mark Thompson Show bump. And good luck with your new edition too, and a smooth landing on all of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. It was really good to see you and talk with you. It went by fast.
Yeah, good times. Christina Pascucci, everybody. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.